Season 4 is here, and I've probably already watched episodes 1 to 3 at least 3 times. Wow, there are so many hidden clues and scenes that you don't notice right away. That's why today I'm doing a recap of Season 4 episodes 1 to 3 with all the secrets that you and I have missed. By the way, you can now get movie and series updates on the second channel. A feast for the eyes. So subscribing is definitely worth it because it's awesome and of course it's free. Now I'm curious to see if you've discovered at least 3 secrets on your own, and you should have at least somewhat understood the story by now. At least as far as that's even possible. Otherwise, maybe watch the video about Victor's drawings first. A lot about the story and what Fromville could theoretically be is already described there. But now let's start with our very first mystery. Season 4 picks up right where Season 3 ended, specifically focusing on Jim's death. But what the man in yellow says afterwards is of great significance. A story simply cannot be changed once it has been told. And yes, those are the exact same words that Ethan says back in Season 1, Episode 1. That's why the theory is gaining traction that the man in yellow might even be Ethan in another cycle. Ethan's childhood story is increasingly becoming reality, and as Ethan mentions in Episode 3 of Season 4, it could be that the story of the Cromenockle is actually based on reality, and that he may have recorded fragments of memories that were already experienced by another person in a previous cycle, as one might describe the phenomenon. This person could be the man in yellow, which would be pretty crazy. However, Ethan seems to know the rules of Fromville quite well somehow. What do you think? Is Ethan really the man in yellow? In the very first episode, you can also catch a glimpse of a special license plate for a very brief moment. If you look very closely at it, it clearly says Eloise, which is the name of Victor's sister. Since we don't know for sure whether Eloise really died or is just very good at hiding, as Victor mentioned earlier in the story, it could potentially be a significant hint at Eloise's mysterious return. Episode 1 also shows how the man in yellow transforms. However, the suitcase he digs up is exactly the same suitcase that Tabitha had previously discovered in the tunnel. But the dress in Tabitha's suitcase is different from the one inside the suitcase of the man in the yellow suit. At first, this seems strange, but if there really are distinct and separate cycles of time, it seems that the man in yellow has used this suitcase multiple times and most likely buried the object in different places. It also tells us that the man in yellow may have already mingled with the local community before, without us or even the residents noticing him at all. When the new residents arrive, that is, the transformed man in yellow, you can briefly see Victor starting to count. Apparently he is counting the residents and notices that something isn't right. So, the number of residents plays a crucial role in the cycle, which now seems to have been broken by the man in yellow. We learn that the number of residents is really important when Kenny counts the residents. According to theories, the residents might need to be in balance in order to end the cycle. According to Kenny, there are 47 residents in the town, and the number 47 really has a strong connection to the history of the place. In Season 1, Episode 6, Father Katri says that the Bible consists of 73 books, and Fromville could be the 74th book. Tilly also says that she has 4 children and 7 grandchildren. Deep inside the cave there is also a detailed ancient drawing with 4 distinct birds on the left side and 7 additional birds on the right side. Super crazy. Apparently it seems that the number 47 or 74 represents a certain specific threshold that must be reached. Since we're talking about the Bible, did you notice that Sophia, that is the man in yellow, brings the first and only Bible to Fromville? That's a pretty clever move by the man in yellow, because the Bible inspires trust and allows Sophia to easily integrate into the group. That's probably why he chose exactly this appearance of a shy girl. Shortly before the crash, you can see Sophia smiling again, which clearly shows that the man in yellow knows exactly what he's doing. Otherwise, why would he deliberately crash his vehicle into the sheriff's house? Sophia also tries to uncover more information regarding the talisman as fast as she possibly can. Yes, and of course we already know why. You can also see that at night. I think the man in yellow wants to test the residents somehow and also find out what they really know about the talisman. Sophia also has a strong connection to Sarah, and in episode 3 she even really wants to live with her. Apparently the man in yellow senses the inner voice that resided in Sarah in season 1. And yes, apparently the voice is still there. We also see in this episode how Acosta slowly begins to doubt herself, and not just because she killed an innocent person, but also because she still doesn't fully understand what this place is. Yeah, just like all of us in a way. But then she drives around in circles 3 times and, well, of course that's not the solution. In this episode I actually found her really annoying, I have to say, and all this behavior really got on my nerves. But when she goes into the small local diner, we suddenly hear the radio turn completely on and it plays a different song that cruelly mocks her. Anyone who has been paying close attention knows that the radio has often mocked people before, like when Kenny's mother died. These songs keep intensifying the bad feelings that spread among the characters. So the place tries to create a sense of discomfort at every turn, even during the day. In season 4, episode 2, the mysteries intensify and a few things are teased, such as the mysterious Lake of Tears, which we already covered in our last video and which Ethan specifically and actively searches for in episode 3. But first, let's take a look at the details from episode 2. It is still unclear whether the goat in the sack is actually Alma, Ethan's favorite goat. That's why Tabitha also sends Ethan to the barn so he can distract himself with his goat. Regardless of which goat it actually is, the hanging sack can be interpreted as a scapegoat which was found in the form of Jim. According to the man in yellow, Jim simply knew too much, and as we know, knowledge always comes at a price. What I do wonder though is how the man in yellow was able to place the goats there and hang Jim during the night if he is actually Sophia and, well, she was actually in the house with Kenny. Or maybe not. After that, we witness Jim's death. Most likely, many viewers noticed this specific detail because Tabitha had already witnessed Jim hanging in exactly the same way back in season 1, episode 9. When she first entered the lighthouse. This strongly suggests that Tabitha saw some glimpses of the future while she was there. The camera also clearly shows Ethan's toy for the Cromenockle story, which is another clue that Ethan's story is actually telling the story of Fromville. If you take all of these elements and piece them together, you can safely assume that Jim really does mirror the character of Norman from Ethan's story. Norman is eventually killed by fairies, and yes, that really aligns quite seamlessly with the lore, because later on in episode 3, we even see Sophia pulling out a man's tooth, perhaps as a reference to the Tooth Fairy. It's important to know that many old stories and myths often portray fairies as dark creatures, and that's exactly what Ethan might have meant in his book. In other words, a dark fairy. The man dressed in yellow is exactly this fairy. I'm pretty sure of it. Maybe we should carefully examine Victor's drawings once more, to see if he might have drawn a yellow fairy. Because in episode 3 it becomes clear that Victor knows the man in yellow very well. In the scene where Ethan actually sees Jim, there is a very subtle little detail that I personally missed. Okay, Jim has a scar on his forehead. That already struck me as a bit odd. Besides, he's really restless and seems to be running from something or is somehow afraid. So it's not the same Jim. Maybe Judy was able to save him somehow after all. In any case, Jim is also wearing the bracelet from Tabitha, the one she made for him. But at the same time, this bracelet is actually lying in the diner with the lost and found items. So this gym could also be from another cycle, which would mean that the bracelet in Victor's father's car also comes from yet another cycle. The bracelet seems to play an important role. Yes, but of course the big question is what that role is. Then we see Judy on her story walk, and here again there's a tiny detail that you can really miss quickly. If you pay close attention, you can actually see that the monster is running toward Judy, and monsters don't usually run. There is one exception, namely when Tabitha tries to reach the lighthouse. So it seems to be a critical situation for the monsters when they start running. Also, Abby's ghost appears in front of Boyd exactly when Julie is attacked by the monster, which raises the theory that Judy might be Boyd's wife in this cycle. Sounds pretty crazy, but it's still unclear why she really killed everyone back then, or whether she might have been able to travel through stories as well. I'm pretty sure that Boyd's wife will play an important role in the next episodes. We can also see a pretty mysterious scene when Sophia picks out a new pair of glasses. And there are two hidden details here. Let's start with the glasses, and I have to admit I personally didn't catch this at all, but luckily there's Reddit. Diligent and eagle-eyed users have actually discovered that the glasses apparently even belong to one of the monsters. So the glasses could be from this specific monster shown right here, who apparently is seen not wearing them later on either. I think that's pretty crazy. The glasses really do look exactly the same, and besides, Sophia takes a very close look at the ballerina and even seems a bit afraid of her. So maybe the ballerina that Boyd saw could actually be a good ally, which immediately raises the question for me. Why was the man in yellow only able to come to the city now? Could it even be connected to the ballerina who was destroyed, and only after that did the man in yellow come to the city? Maybe this ballerina was some kind of, well, shield or something like that, but of course that's all just theory. Episode 3 then isn't really all that wild anymore. By the way, here Sophia also pulls out her supposed father's tooth, which I suspect is a hint at the fairies as I mentioned earlier, but it could also mean that the man in yellow always needs some kind of souvenir, a keepsake, similar to what Victor described. You need a special object to honor and remember the person by. If you interpret it that way, then Victor's own suitcase takes on a completely different meaning. So if that tooth really can be seen as a precious keepsake, then what about all of Victor's other belongings? Perhaps in light of this sudden realization, these are not just ordinary things, but are actually the personal belongings of other people that the man in yellow must not get his hands on. So it could very well be that the items in the lost and found are actually not lost items at all, but all come from people who have previously died. What is clear in any case is that certain objects play a major role, such as Jim's bracelet for example. When Victor later sees the clothes of the man in yellow, he doesn't just panic, he is utterly terrified for his life. He has already drawn the man in yellow before, and it seems as if a nightmare has come true. It appears that repressed childhood memories are resurfacing, and Victor now knows that the man in yellow is truly real. In episode 3, there actually aren't that many hidden details anymore. Sure, a lot still happens, but when Tabitha is determined to go back through the bottle tree, it becomes clear that we've already seen this scene before, but not in Fromville. Rather, it was when Tabitha was in the real world and met Henry. There too, she was determined to go to the bottle tree, and Henry reacted in a very similar way. So this scene is kind of mirrored, and Henry once again seems to take on the role of protector. Even in Fromville, he wants to prevent everything from getting out of control again. Episode 3 does show a few more things, but they're not particularly well hidden or anything like that. Randall grabs Ethan's books and sees a rat, which is supposed to represent the decay of Fromville, and specifically that the cycle is about to end. You can also see this in the boy in white who appears shortly afterwards. he has grown older and changed, which also symbolizes the progression of the current cycle. He says that the residents apparently are on the right track. With his statement, he definitely confirms that they have followed a crucial lead. Jade then finds some mushrooms, which he will probably take in the next episode, and Boyd gets grabbed by the right arm again. One way or another, Boyd's right arm seems to play a major role. His trembling is always on the right side. He also got those strange worms on his right arm, and there are many other clues that strongly suggest and point toward the right arm. Maybe that means something significant, but we don't find out much more right now and just have to wait for episode 4 to come out again. And wow, friends, I can't wait to see what happens next. This series is just super crazy. It's simply fascinating. I just hope they don't mess up the ending with the resolution. If you feel the same way and like this format, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. That way I know where I can pick up next time. And important, how many hidden clues have you actually found now? Did you discover even more, or maybe find things that weren't even mentioned here? Then please be sure to write it in the comments, because I'd love to read about it. After this, I'll link you to the video about Victor's map. It's also super interesting in any case, all these pictures and drawings and how everything could be connected. So I wish you lots of fun with it in case you want to take another look. See you next time. Take care. Adios and ciao ciao.